some of the my older brethren will like have to direct cars and stuff like that, which is an order. But you know, if we make it happen, but guys, it's like, I mean, it's only like a weekend. No, 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 it's not like a. Yeah, it's like a festival. Yeah, exactly. Well, good evening, everybody. I think there's still a couple people finding a seat yet, but I think we'll go ahead and get started. Let's sing number 526 in the Hymns of the Church. 526.
All right, welcome everybody. It's good to see you all again. Anyway, warm Texas, get a taste of that. So, okay, for tonight, we are gonna. Jason's gonna be sharing about his Project 61 Ministries, and as soon as that picture gets up, I can tell you, Jason and Carol are from Sullivan, Illinois, Arthur area. And anyway, for the local folks here, Carol's dad, Mervyn Yoder, was here 5-6 years ago for weekend meetings. So anyway, a little bit of, and we've known Mervyns for quite a number of years. And so it's interesting to see how time moves on. Maybe you got lucky, Logan. Yeah, and unfortunately today the gym was undergoing renovations, so the AC didn't quite work the way I wished it would have. But anyway, I was a little bit of a what's the word? Husapopal or party pooper. I went home and took a nap, so I feel pretty good. So anyway, but yeah, it's always good the amount of planning that goes into it. Not coming up, Tim. Okay, that's fine. Let me just pause it. Okay. But anyway, on as far as the planning committee, it's always such a I don't know, kind of a cool feeling to see y'all here. So makes the planning worth it to show your you want to be here and participate and meet new friends and all that. So that's always exciting. Anyway, the picture was oh, it is? Nice. There we go. Okay, as soon as that gets off of there, press power again. Power off. No, I don't want power off. There we go. Anyway, so yeah, we've known Mervyn Yoders for quite a while. This was, we were youth counselors with them. We went to I forget, some campground. Anyway, Carol is like maybe 6, 7. Logan is 1. So anyway, lot of good memories there. So anyway, so yeah, again, Jason, it's been good having y'all here, Jason and Carol. I know leaving kids behind is sometimes a little bit difficult, but thank you for coming. So come on up, and Jason's going to be sharing about their ministry, Project 61 Ministries, and tonight we'll try to keep it a little bit short, probably close by about 8 or so, and then afterward there'll be snack, and I'll have some announcements after Jason's done. So let's pray. God, thank you so much for the enjoyable time we've had this weekend already. Thank you that we still have the freedom to do this, Lord, that we can just gather and learn about you and be with Jason tonight as he shares their ministry, and that you would receive honor and glory from it. Continue to bless their ministry. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Y'all are lucky he gave me a time. Well, good evening. I want to start off by saying thank you. We have been welcomed very warmly and given an absolutely amazing weekend. Good place to stay. I told someone that if they wouldn't have told me that it's normally not this green, I could have almost been convinced that Texas would be worth living in. So we do like Illinois. But I want to say thank you to Aaron and Denise for your hospitality, the rest of the team here, and you as youth. I've enjoyed getting to know you. I have not met everyone, but I count it a privilege and an honor to get to speak to you all. So thank you for hearing me out and not kicking me out sooner. I'd like to start with a short devotional and then move into the presentation. So the devotional will come from Matthew chapter 22. Kind of ties in with the heart of what we are doing at Project 61 Ministries. So in Matthew chapter 22, the Pharisees asked Jesus, as a temptation, they asked him, "Master, which is the great commandment in the law?" And Jesus' response to them was, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment." But he didn't stop there. He went on to say, "And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." So if we would fulfill these commandments perfectly, I don't believe we'd need the 10 commandments. We wouldn't need a lot of the laws we have, because if we are loving others correctly, we would do what honors others. So I had a little bit of an experience watching this play out. See, our culture wants to hijack the word love. If they use the term love is love. They say, if you love me, you'll let me do what I want. And so sometimes we struggle with this thing of loving others. I got to watch it play out I think I mentioned that I had a brother who was addicted to drugs. In 2022, My father-in-law, myself, and another gentleman from church surrounded him, prayed over him, and drove out, drove out demons in the name of Jesus. And he sat down at the table, tears streaming down his face, and he said, I can think, the voices are gone. I've never felt this way. Thank you, Tim. And he stayed with us that night, woke up the next day and said, it's been years since I slept that way. Normally I wake myself screaming. And over the next couple of days, we got him a job, we got him started working, but he said, I've got to go somewhere to get help. I've got to go to rehab. And we called every rehab we could find, and every one of them said, we're full, we don't have space, call us in 30 days, whatever. And my brother told my father-in-law, he said, I've got to go now because I know that when day 10 hits, that's when withdrawals can be really bad. I'm afraid I'll relapse, and that's what happened. At about day 10, he ended up back out on the streets. And over the next year and a half, he pretty much went silent. He quit talking to the family again. And I grew up in a good home. I had a mom and a dad that loved me, taught me right from wrong. One of the things my dad did, so I watched my brother for over 20 years, and he was kind of my hero. He was the one that I wanted to be like. And I watched him come home sometimes so angry and so strung out on drugs that I'd grab my little sister and we'd run out in the vehicle and we'd lock the van because we didn't know if he was going to kill someone. He would throw things at my dad to kill my dad, and my dad would just keep on, you've got to quit, and he would preach at him. And their relationship just kept breaking down until my dad couldn't even talk to him anymore. Pretty much the only one he would talk to. I mean, he would still talk to my dad occasionally, but he'd call me before he'd call my dad. And in 2023, the end of 2023, the beginning, started to have a longing to have a relationship with his son again. And he felt like he needs to go find him. And so one Sunday afternoon, he took off and he drove 45 minutes into the city where my brother was at, homeless. And he started praying and driving around, and he wasn't there long, and he looks into a store parking lot, and he sees this guy on a bicycle go riding across a parking lot, and he's like, no way, that's my son. And he pulls up, and he's like, Dwayne, what are you doing? And he said the look on Dwayne's face was like, what are you doing here? And he said, I just want to talk. Can I buy you supper? And so they went out and ate, and he started doing this about once a week. He'd drive up there, and he didn't tell us kids. He started driving up to Champaign, and he would pick my brother up, and he'd get him a meal, and he'd talk with him. And my brother started asking about the family, and how's the family doing? And eventually he's like, Dad, I'm doing better. And Dad, I got a place now. I mean, he was squatting. He was in a garage, an empty garage, where he had built a little hut out of cardboard boxes, and it was winter, and he showed my dad how his toes had turned black because they'd frostbite so bad. But he had a little coffee can, and I'm assuming he stole it, but he had some little alcohol there that he would light, and that was his heat for a while, and then he'd blow it out and go to sleep. And he's like, Dad, I'm doing better. I'm gonna come. I want to get good enough to be able to see my family. And in May of 2024, they found him dead. He'd been driven over multiple times. They ruled it an accident. There's still, us as a family still have a lot of questions, but my dad said if I'd have known that loving him would change so much, I'd have done that a long time ago. And that heart right there, just loving on someone, sometimes they don't love themselves. Actually, a lot of times in deeply broken people, they don't love themselves, and they need someone else to love them. And that's really our heart at Project 61 Ministries. So I'd like to give another introduction to who we are. I know most of you know us. This is my family. The one on the left is Nevaeh, her mom Emily. In the center is my lovely wife Carol, our oldest daughter Tirza, and then our youngest son Cole. He's our special needs son. And then on the far right, on my left in the picture, is my brother Dwayne's son Onyx, who we had the privilege of adopting actually before my brother died. And actually got to see him start to build that relationship with his son again. So this is my father-in-law Merv and Laureen and their family. And they are co-founders of Project 61 Ministries. The name Project 61 Ministries comes from Isaiah 61, the first 3 verses. And this is what Jesus quoted in, I believe it was in Matthew, when he stood up in the temple and he said, "The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all that mourn, to appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, and all of this, that he might be glorified." So these underlined parts are really our mission at Project 61 Ministries. This is an aerial shot of Project 61. So I'm going to go back. There's a lot of history in just the acquisition of these buildings. And so there's about, in this right here, those buildings that are all connected, I snapped the roof line on Google Maps and got a rough estimate of about 100,000 square feet of roof line, which means there's about 300,000 square feet of building there. So there's literally no way for me to totally explain how big this is with a picture, but it's one building on the far end has 15 apartments in it, and there's 9 buildings at least that size there. So just be thinking of that as we go through this. But in going back, I talked about my wife and I started a children's ministry. Through that, we started to get a burden for a daycare and just investing more into children. And we prayed about that for quite a while. And with time, the burden became heavier. Like I said, in 2022, my father-in-law was involved in praying over my brother. That really started him on a journey where he started praying about what can we do to help people in these situations. And the two are very closely related, and yet we had no idea about the other praying for this. So he started praying about building something on some property that he had. And that Saturday he goes to the coffee shop. The coffee shop said, the people at the coffee shop were like, "Hey, did you know that Masonic Home is for sale?" Which is this property. And he was like, "Whoa, God, like, it's a lot bigger than I was thinking." But he called them and they said, "Well, we got a bid for $1.6 million. So if you want the place, you have to bid higher than that." And my father-in-law was like, "Yeah, that's not going to happen." But he took an aerial shot, printed it off, put it on the corner of his desk, and he just started praying over it. And he had the verse, I can't quote it right now, but "Now unto you, O Father, above all that we ask or think." I don't remember the whole verse, but then he would say, "So let it be, God." And he would pray over it for about a year. And he ran into the guy that actually bought it, which is a local investor. About a year later, he started talking to him, and he's like, "What are you doing with the property?" He said, "I don't know. I've offered it to numerous churches, and they don't want it. It's way too big. The upkeep is ridiculous. The cost to even renovate it would be ridiculous, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet." Well, my father-in-law didn't realize, but at the same time, we were praying about starting a daycare, and we had been pursuing some options, and nothing was working out. And so he's like, I was talking to him one evening. He's like, "Why don't you call Greg? Maybe he would rent you one of these buildings or something." And so I prayed another 3 weeks because I wanted to be sure that Greg had something in mind, because I didn't have the money to do anything with it anyway. And so I called him on a Saturday night, and he answered, and he's like, "Yeah, let's meet next Saturday." So the next Saturday we were headed down there, and he called me. He said, "Hey, I'll meet you there. I'll show you around, but I've got an agreement with a friend. I'm going to sell everything to him, so you have to work with him." And that was kind of a little blow. It was like, okay. And so we stopped in, or we went down and we met with him. This little building right was called the Knight Building, and that was the one I asked him about. It's a fairly open space, kind of like a gym or an event center. So I told him what's up, asked him if we could rent it, and he ended up showing us through the whole building. So it was like an hour-long walk through the building, and my father-in-law asked him, like, so what are you selling the place for? He thought maybe there'd be an option to buy, and he just grinned. He's like, well, more than I paid for it. And so we figured out that's not going to happen. By the time we left, we were pretty discouraged. My wife said, this is never going to happen. We don't have the staff. We don't have the money. And that place is huge. Like, it's going to take too much. And I was trying to be a holy Christian, and I looked at her and I said, if this is God's work, he'll provide all that. And we got home. My daughter asked if we're moving because she'd been praying for a dog, and I kept telling her we got to have a bigger place before we get a dog. And so she asked if we can pray. We're like, sure. So we prayed. And I'm not kidding when I say within an hour, Greg called, and he's like, hey, are you still there? I said, no. He's like, what do you want to do? And so I was telling him, but then I was like, we're not going to take it because we can't afford to renovate the place plus pay rent. So they were using steam to heat this whole place. We had to find a different heat source, and it was going to cost a lot of money. And as I said, I was a school teacher. It looked a little overwhelming. And so I told him, I was like, we can't afford it. And he's like, what else would you use if you had the place, or what else would you like to do? And so I gave him some things that we were involved with the children's ministry, and we like to grow. And he's like, would you take the whole place? And so I laughed a little, and I was like, yeah, we can't afford that either. And he's like, no, I'll donate it. If you pay $1, that'll make it a legal transaction. The rest will be a tax write-off for me. I think you need it. And I started bawling because I tried to tell my wife that if it's God's work, he'll provide. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. We did accept the place for $1. And when we walked into the administration office, on one of the pieces of glass left over from the former company, there was a $1 bill taped on the window. So we worked out a deal on this. What you can't see on this end, there's 26 units of duplexes that he kept as his moneymaker, and then donated a lot of the land and the buildings here that you see here. But there's 3 houses out by the highway that he gave us he had gotten them appraised and was getting ready to put them on the market, and he gave us a huge houses because he said everything needs to stay together. And so the ministry has over 33 acres there with 2 ponds and 3 houses and all these buildings that we took ownership of in March of 2024. So this all started in November of 23. As soon as we agreed to take possession, we started praying about a name and setting up a 501c3 so that we could make the transaction. We applied for the 501c3 status, and they said plan on 6 months, and we wanted things to move a lot faster than that. He wanted things to move faster than that. So we started praying, and one of our board members has a connection with a congresswoman, and he called her and he's like, is there any way to expedite this? She's like, hang on, I'll have my team reach out. That afternoon yet, I had a call from her team, and in 3 months we had a 501c3 nonprofit status. And just throughout, we've seen God at work in every little detail. So we started praying about what do we start with. And I went back in my journal, and almost exactly a year before Greg offered to donate this, in my journal, I had a heavy weight on my heart for the abortion epidemic and the young moms. We had a teen mom living with us. We had several living with us. And what we could do to help young mothers. We were involved with a lot of teens that were having kids, and I knew there was nothing I could do. So in my journal, I just told God, okay, God, I'm going to put this back on a shelf until you do something, because I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to carry this burden until you bring it back, and then I'll know it's time to do something. And it was almost exactly a year later we took ownership of this property. And so we went through the building, and we found which building we felt would be a good starting place, and that building had 15 apartments in it, and that was the beginning of what we call House of Ruth. And I'll get into what the House of Ruth is a little bit later. I'm going to give a lot of I'm going to try, if I have time, to give a lot of God stories throughout, just ways that God is working, because I believe that people are encouraged when they hear God at work, when they can see that God is moving. And so I want you all to be encouraged. One of the God stories, before we hadn't even started doing anything yet, I was still a school teacher. We were finishing school out, and then we were going to move and start really renovating. But I was at my brother's mechanic shop on a Saturday or something, doing some work, and a friend from the community walked in and started talking to me, and I just said something about, yeah, when we move, and he's like, oh, you're moving, and so I kind of told him what's up, and we had a little chat, and he's like, oh, that's so cool. I'm so happy that something's happening with the buildings, and then he walked out the door. I went back to work, and he walked right back in. He's like, who did I make a check out to? I was like, what? He's like, who did I make a check out to? I want to help. And he handed me a $2,000 check, and we hadn't even started doing anything there yet. Early on, we were like, well, there's 33 acres. We need some good mowers. So we called a local mower company, and we're like, hey, what could you do for us? Like, any way that we can get a discount? Or he's like, I'll call Ferris. They usually do pretty good with discounts for nonprofits, and we'll see what we can do. And he called my father-in-law later, and he's like, hey, I'm going to drop off 4 mowers. I want you to test them all and figure out which ones you want. But the 2 we ended up going with were very large Ferris mowers that the lot price was, I think, $18,500, I think. And by the time he got all the discounts applied, he said, I can give you one for $6,500 and the other one for $7,500. And so we were like, yeah, we'll take those. And we used them, liked them, told him we'll take them. And that was on like a Friday. He's like, I'm busy this weekend. We'll deal with the paperwork Monday. I know you want them. We'll worry about it next week. So on Monday I called him and I was like, what do we need to do to get them paid and make sure that they're ours? And he's like, actually, just again, somebody stopped in and paid for them. And to this day, I don't know where those mowers came from, but someone paid for 2 brand new Ferris mowers for us. And then our guys were like, we kind of need a bagger mower. We're like, okay. So we called the company again, and we're like, can you get baggers for these? And he's like, you do not want a bagger on those mowers. You need a walker. Okay. So my father-in-law started checking Marketplace and found one locally that the guy was selling at a reasonable price, and he just messaged him and was like, hey, this is what's up. We need some mowers. We need a mower with a bagger. Looks like yours would be a good option. It was a heavily used mower, but it was still in good shape. And he's like, what's the best you'd do? And he's like, for something like that, I would come down like $500. And he said, okay, let me message the board and we'll discuss it and I'll let you know. And before he could send the email, he got another message, and the gentleman said, actually, I feel led. I'm going to drop this mower off. It's yours free of charge. And so we've got 3 lawnmowers that the only thing we've paid for is, I think, maybe some blades that someone damaged. So this is another shot, kind of a updated shot of the property. You can see some of the roofs are turning black in this picture. Those are roofs that we've replaced. This is a different angle, I guess you could say. This shows more of the property. And notice in the front yard there's a flower bed with a large P symbol in it for Peterson Health. It was a healthcare facility, so it was a Masonic home. And I don't know if you guys know anything about Freemasons, but there's a whole lot of baggage there that we spent a lot of time praying over, and just God story after God story. We spend a lot of time as a board going through and praying over the place, and we brought in a group to pray over the place with us and hauled out a lot of symbols and burned them as an offering to God, just asking God to redeem the property. And after that happened, there was some guys there working one evening, and one of the guy's wives, he called her and asked if she could bring him a sandwich and a drink, and she's like, where you at? And when she showed up, she's like, I had said I would never come to this place again because of the feeling. And we had a lot of former employees that very openly talked about the spirits that were in the building and the things that would happen. But she said she got out of her vehicle, she walked up to one of our board members' wives and said, what'd you guys do here? Because I've never felt peace at this place like I do now. And it was like a stamp of God's approval, like God's at work. and he's got it taken care of. This is an updated picture, and if you notice that flower bed now has a cross in it. This is a picture that if you volunteer as you pull in the front drive, you'll see this view, or when you volunteer. This is on the House of Ruth, what we call the House of Ruth. We were able to replace both of these roofs we've had so many quotes that I didn't write all the numbers down, and they're all running together, but I think we have about 80,000 in both of these roofs here. If you do standing seam metal, it's a 75 by 150 building, plus the flat roof on the front. So they gave us a pretty good deal on that. This roof, I believe, is another God story. When we showed up, in the one corner, there was, as we were touring the place, I went upstairs and I could stand in a room and see all the way out and see the sky. You're not supposed to see that with a roof above you. There was a hole like 4 feet in diameter that had been raining in, and so we knew we had to fix this one pretty quick, and we called and they quoted about $103,000 to replace this roof with standing seam because there's a lot of dormers and hips and valleys, and we're like, whoo, and that was with discounts. And so something that early on my father-in-law felt like God laid on his heart was that if we're faithful in the little things, he will take care of the big things. Okay, so we'd been praying hard for a $10 a month sponsor. So one of our goals is to get 500 people to commit to giving $10 a month. We do sponsorships, and we had a $2,500 a month sponsor from a business, and several $1,000 a month sponsors, and quite a few $100 a month sponsors. Wouldn't you know it, you could not get someone to give $10 a month. If you're like me, it's like $10, that goes nowhere. But we kept promoting it. Like, if you can give up 2 coffee drinks, that would go a little ways. I mean, God'll do something with $10, and if we can get 500 people to agree to that, that's $5,000 a month that we can depend on coming in. We kept praying, and so we asked him, can you requote this with shingles? And he's like, well, definitely cheapen it up. We'll see. And so he requoted it. Could I get some water? I'm sorry. He requoted it, and on the day that we got our quote, that was also the day we got our first $10 a month sponsor. And the new quote came in at $37,000 from $103,000. And you could say it was coincidence, but I very strongly believe God was just saying, take care of the little things and I'll take care of the big ones. And so that roof has shingles on it. And by the way, these buildings were built, the first building was started in 1904, and they're all steel and concrete, and like the foundations are about 30 inches thick of concrete. So when we went to renovate the one building, they would figure an hour and a half to core drill through the foundation because they're so hard. And so these buildings they're built to last. Most of the roofs have a concrete roof on them as well. So they're pretty solid buildings. This was what we call a daycare. Plans are to renovate it and turn it into a daycare. It used to be a nurse's station, but when we showed up, it had a flat roof on it and was dumping water inside the building. And so we got a quote to replace this roof, and they were at about $65,000. So we're like, what can you do if you put trusses and metal on it? And they're like, well, that's never cheaper, but sure, we'll get a quote. Ended up, we were able to do it for about $45,000 to put trusses and metal on this roof. We're going to include this picture. This is the cross in the front yard. Thank you. The cross in the front yard. Our lawn care guy approached us and was like, what do you think about doing adoptive flower beds? There's flower beds where we open it up and local women can just adopt a flower bed, and it's their job to take care of it. And we're like, yeah, absolutely. Less work for us, and it gets the community involved. And this was one lady's, she adopted this flower bed and redid the entire thing. And the flower beds, it was amazing how many people came in to take care of flower beds, and they're still doing it today. It's a year and a half later. And it's a ministry all in itself. So one of the things about this property is it's one of the largest complexes in the county, and it is I think it's one of the oldest as well, and it has deep, deep roots in the community. And so the local community immediately noticed that something was happening there, and they started asking a lot of questions. A lot of rumors started flying too. We were informed that we're receiving 1,000 illegal immigrants at some point. Sheriff didn't like that. But the community immediately took notice, and the Historical Society asked me to come to a presentation. And the first thing that was said at the end of that presentation, a person raised their hand and they said, "Thank you for taking care of the place. It means so much to us." And it's amazing. So we are not a church-sponsored ministry. We are not affiliated with one church. We have, all of our board members are from Anabaptist background churches, or we have one Amish board member. But we have our statement of faith, and we will work with anyone that can agree with that statement of faith. So we have a Southern Baptist pastor who's also a psychologist and a counselor who's put together a year's worth of psychology courses for all of our staff, and free of charge is teaching those classes. We have Methodist churches. We even had Catholic churches sending us checks. And they get so excited. The community is so excited to be able to work with other churches in one place to make the name of Jesus known. It has been a blessing to be a part of this. So this is what we call the House of Ruth. I've got just a few befores and afters. So this is what it looked like when we showed up. The glass area up top was, they called it a solarium. It was basically a room, sunroom, but it was leaking severely when we showed up. This is what it looks like now. So this is, just for context, this building in the early 2000s was sold to a healthcare facility, and the healthcare facility was really good at buying places to run them into the ground. And that's what they did with this one. They didn't really fix much. They would just run them until they were out of money, and then they'd sell them. And so in 2022 is when it sold. So it sat empty for 2 winters. And because they're built the way they are, during the winter when it would get freezing cold, and then the next week get into the 30s with the sun shining, you'd have water just pouring down the walls from evaporation, or from condensation. And so imagine 2 winters of this thing sitting empty with condensation, and you walk in and everything smells about like it sounds. It was pretty rough. But we started in May of 2024 working on this building, and July 1st of 2025 we took our first resident. So this is what we call House of Ruth. It is a 1-year program, transitional housing for women and children at risk. The program is set up to accept women that have either lost their children to DCFS, which is Illinois' version of CPS, I think. If their children are with DCFS, we'll work with them, or if they're at risk of losing their children to DCFS. And by the way, like, DCFS is super excited. They've called us. It's interesting how God has worked. But we have 5 residents. 3 of them have their children with DCFS. And it's amazing how excited they are about changing their life when they have the opportunity. The program is designed to be a year long. They come in, and the first 4 months is supposed to be a time of healing for them. So they focus on devotions, life skills classes, personal development classes. We don't really want them to have a job the first 4 months. We want them to really focus on personal development and healing. And after 4 months, we'll help them find a job, help them get established, save their money, and by the end of a year, they're supposed to be set up to where they can go back and live on their own, hopefully having better boundaries and better life skills. And the goal is all the time to teach them about Jesus. So we can never force someone to accept Jesus, but our heart and our goal is that every time they turn around, they can bump into his love. Our staff are encouraged to pray with them and just spend time with them. So one of the things we did inside this building, like I said, there's 15 apartments. The basement was completely renovated and made as kind of their common space. They have a lounge, a large kitchen, and a dining area down there. And one of the things we did was adopter rooms. So we opened up and we told local families that if you adopt a room, you can come in and furnish a room however you like, but whatever you put in there then becomes Project 61's property. And it's amazing how quickly those rooms all got adopted. And originally my thought was, you go to IKEA or somewhere and you buy 15 beds, you buy 15 dressers, and you just stock the rooms. By allowing women to have the freedom to do what they want in there, I should have put pictures in here, but the rooms are incredible. They came in, they painted, some of them, they all did fantastic. Some of them put new trim. A lot of them painted cabinets. They completely redid the rooms. And so each apartment has like a little kitchenette, a bathroom, shower, and then a room, and some of them have a living area as well. But what it does is it allows the women to feel a personal touch and know that someone cares. I got to be there when one of the residents walked into their room for the first time. And so we had this young lady that showed up, obviously scared to death. And we told her, let's go show you your room, kind of show you around. As we were walking down the hallway, she went walking past the door and like, oh, hold up, this is your room. And as she turned and walked in there, she goes, no, you guys, no, there's no way. And you could hear all the emotions coming out. And we told her, there was a family that decorated this room for you, and they're praying for you. And she's like, I'm not an emotional person, and I just want to cry. And it was like just that little thing. I mean, it's not a little thing, but that thing of someone taking the time to prepare a room for them was such a blessing. Another lady came in, and the next morning she said, I know that God has been pursuing me, and walking in that room was a confirmation, decorated with all my favorite colors, and it was like God was just saying, I've got this for you. And so these women, when they signed up to adopt a room, had no idea the impact that they would have years down the road with these women. Our goal, long term, is to also have an addiction facility. Hopefully we can have a men's and women's, as well as a teen center. Our projects right now are the House of Ruth, finishing up the House of Ruth. And then we had a youth group that came for a week, and they worked in our event center, so the building that I showed you earlier that I really called about. They came in and stripped all the wallpaper, repainted, and poured a lot of work into that building. So we want to make that an event center and kind of like a gymnasium so that the residents have a place to go do things. And then we've also started on a third wing that we call the business center. And that wing, we have 3 floors. The first floor is being gutted to become a coffee shop and a thrift store. So the idea is hopefully generate some income for the ministry, but also give the women a place to work, gain some life skills. And then the third floor would become office spaces that the general public can rent out. And again, just a way to support the ministry. Not sure why I have that picture. This is Jerry Hostettler. He's our lawn care, in charge of our lawn care. I hope he's okay with me sharing his testimony. So he had a very successful business, making really good money. Actually, I think he was hauling mini barns. And him and his wife started to feel a tug on their hearts that there's something more. And they kept praying, God, what is it? What do you want us to do? Finally, his wife said, I think we have to say yes before we know what it is. And so they agreed. Whatever it is, they'll say yes. And I believe it was like that Sunday. My father-in-law went to their church to preach, and afterwards they all went, Jerry's and my father-in-law's and several others went to someone's house for lunch. And my father-in-law started sharing what's going on. And these two sat there in silence because they've driven past this place. They live to where they drive past this place twice a day. And Jerry had made the comment, I'd love to make that place look nice. And as they left, they drove by, and one of them looked at the other, and one of them said, don't even say it. And they started to feel this weight, that this may be where God is calling them. And I had no idea any of this was happening. But the next week, I was serving a Christmas supper with my students, and Jerry just happened to be there in the kitchen working, and him and I were chatting, and I have this habit of just like throwing random ideas out and hoping something sticks. And he was asking me about Project 61 and what we're doing, and I just looked at him and was like, hey, you need a new job, don't you? Why don't you come do lawn care for us? We'll might even pay you. And he just kind of grinned, and then we went on talking. Pay you enough? I don't know what the plan is here. And so I called the board, and I was like, hey, I got this text. What do you say? And they're like, I mean, if he's willing, yeah. So I called him, and I was like, I don't know what we're going to be able to pay you. And he said, I don't care. I firmly believe this is where God is calling me. I'll do it. And so he sold his business, and he's there full time. And now he's got such a ministry. We have what we call minions that come in. They're young boys that come in during the summer when they're off school. And by the way, they own it. They now want a golf cart that has minions on the side, and it's a whole thing. But these young boys come in, and they help mow yard, and they help trim and things like that. And he has such a ministry with these young men, and it does so well with them. This is Earl Miller. He's our maintenance man. Again, he had a successful lawn care. I had no idea he was planning to sell. I don't even know if he was planning to sell. And he was sitting in church one evening when my father-in-law was sharing, and he said, we need someone to do maintenance. And the next day he gets a call. And Earl said, my stomach was in knots when you said that. And he's since sold his lawn care business, and he's there full-time overseeing the maintenance at Project 61. We now have, I think, 6 full-time staff there, and 1 part-time, and then several volunteers as well. I share all these stories as an encouragement. This weekend I talked a lot about investing in your community, following Jesus, and allowing God to work. I am truly humbled to say that I have pages, literally pages of what I call God stories. Stories of things that should never have worked out. In 2024, Project 61 Ministries raised and spent $1.1 million the first year that we were an actual nonprofit. That doesn't happen generally. I went to visit a ministry that said it was a similar ministry, and the founder told me, he looked at me, he said, if God gave you a facility like that, you have to start praying really big prayers. He's like really big prayers, things that you wouldn't normally pray. And so I was like, all right, sure. Middle of June, I started praying. And I was like, God, if you would lay it on one person's heart to make a $10,000 donation, one time, we could use it. And it would just be a confirmation that you're going to take care of us. And I prayed that every day through June. And by about the end of June, it was a Saturday morning, I was pretty discouraged. I was pretty sure God was not going to, I thought I had asked for too much. On a Saturday morning, I got handed an envelope from a financial institution that I didn't recognize. And I tore it open, and I pulled out a check from an anonymous donor for $27,000. And I just started weeping. God cares. He cares so deeply. Just time after time of God showing up in mighty ways. And I'm genuinely humbled to get to be a part of it. I believe God has plans like this all across this nation, where he wants to show himself mighty and he wants to work. And if you don't want to start it there, come to us and serve there. We are looking for some. We don't have any VS service set up, but we are looking for people that would be willing to come help. We need several maintenance people and several people to help in the House of Ruth. We have a 5K coming up, so I don't generally encourage phone use, but if you want to go to our website, we have, I don't generally encourage phone use in church, I should say. If you want to go to our website, that's where our upcoming events are. If you want to sign up for newsletters, we send out monthly newsletters that talk about upcoming events and just kind of share, I try to share God's stories and like what's happening at Project 61. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor, like I don't believe everyone should give. I believe some should give. And I know that a lot of you are probably supporting local ministries and other things. But our goal is to get 500 $10 a month sponsors, and we're nowhere near that yet. But I've come to the place where I can genuinely say I don't fear that we won't have enough money, because money has never been a problem. It's been close. We've started projects that we didn't really know where the money was coming from, but it always showed up. I'll give you another one. So our chapel roof we got our chapel ACs. So I said that it was heated by steam. Every building that we go into, now we have to pipe gas to it and get forced air put in. And so it is an expensive process to get things done. But our chapel, we really wanted to be able to use it. It's a nice chapel. There's like theater style seats in it. It seats 154 people in there. And we wanted to use it for community events, things like that. So we spent the money and got heat and ACs put in. And promptly after that, the roof started leaking. And so we patched it, and we're like, it'll last another year. But over Christmas, I got a call from a local business, and he's like, hey, what kind of projects you got going on? We're looking at end-of-year giving. What are things that you guys are doing, and what are ways that we could support? And so I started listing, like, well, we have this project, this whole roof needs to be replaced. It just started leaking, and I said, I have a quote for about $14,000, and he's like, okay, well, that gives me so much, you know. About 2 days later, I get a text. We're sending a $15,000 check to cover the cost of the chapel roof. Go ahead and get it done. I was like, wow, bless you, okay. And before I was able to let the company know that I'd quoted it to go ahead with the roof, I did another presentation in a small church, and afterwards, I had a fellow approach me, and he said, hey, my company does standing seam metal. Are you guys doing any roofs? Yeah, we are actually. And so I sent him the dimensions, and he said, we like to try to donate at least one roof a year if we can, to give back to either elderly people or someone in need. I'd like to support. And so I sent him the dimensions, and he sent me an email back, and he said, I think we can do it at $6,000 your cost. And so we said, yeah, let's go ahead with that. And the other company that had quoted it is a very supportive business locally there. I mean, he drops off dumpsters. He has his own dumpsters for his business, and he drops off a dumpster, and when it's full, we call him, and we never get a bill. So we have hauled dumpster after dumpster out of that place, and we never get a bill. But I called him, and I was like, hey, man, I'd love to give you business, but this is what happened. He's like, yeah, go with that. And later, he called me. He's like, would they work together, like work with us? I said, I don't know. So they got together and ended up, they worked together, showed up, and in one day they tore off all the old shingles, patched the roof, and put the new metal on. And I think our out-of-pocket cost ended up being $4,000. And so I called this company back that had sent the $15,000 check, and I was like, hey, so what do you want done with the extra money? And he's like, well, if God's going to work that way, use it wherever you want. And so I don't fear much where we're going to be at financially. But I'm also not perfect, and I fear a lot where our staff are going to come from, where our residents are going to come, if we're going to be able to help our residents. And I think one of my biggest fears is, what if we do all of this and we teach Jesus and Jesus doesn't show up in these situations? Like, is he really going to show up? And it has been such a blessing. So we've been open now for just a little over 3 weeks. And the times that God has just showed up in the middle of a mess over and over. And so I leave this with you. If you're faithful, God is even more faithful. And he will provide. Any questions? Okay. Long term, we'd like to. So right now, a part of the requirement for the residents is that they go to a church. And so we get local churches that will pick them up and take them to church with them, or we take them. Long term, we're trying to figure out what it looks like, whether we start our own church there or kind of have a chaplain program or what it looks like, but we would like to have something on site at some point that is geared towards the residents. And it's hard. It's really hard to bring someone in that is in a program like that and them not feel like the project. And so we want to have a service that really allows them to be a part of that service, whether it's reading some scripture or picking the songs or whatever that looks like. But that's our plan long term. Yes, sir. I don't have quite that much faith. I've been trying to get him to, well, yeah. If you don't want to give your number to my wife for our pilot program with the dating thing, sign up for $10 and I won't press the issue. I don't know. Maybe I should also say if you sign up for we were going to bring merch or something, and we flew and didn't hardly have room. So I have just a few wristbands. I don't know if anybody here wears wristbands, but Weston wants one. I didn't make it to Weston. There's another guy over here on the end. I've got just a few left if somebody wants some. That one hit him. I think I have 2 or 3 left, but yes. Oh, I don't have any up here. I'll have to get it to you later. So, any other questions? If you didn't hear, she said if tomorrow we can check the website and let you know how many people have signed up. But we do want people to be obedient. So if God's laying it on your heart to give, please give. If he's laying it on your heart to serve, please serve. And if he's just laying it on your heart to pray, that's a work in itself. So we want obedient people. We don't want someone serving when they should be praying. We don't want someone just praying when they should be serving. Does that make sense? We just want you to be obedient to whatever God has for you. There's no other questions. My time is up. I want to say thank you again. You guys have been great listeners. We've had great hosts. It has been truly an honor and a privilege to be here this weekend. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Jason. Yeah, don't usually have this problem, but there's a lot of dust or allergies going around. My eyes were watering quite a bit. But anyway, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, all the God stories that happened there. So thanks again. Couple of announcements. Let's see here. Tomorrow morning, I know in the schedule it says 9 o'clock, but church starts at 9:30. We'll start off with singing, and also be prepared. There will be some time for share time. So if you feel led to do that, go ahead and get ready for that. Snack tonight, again over in the fellowship hall right after this, and then Sunday's also a fellowship lunch as well. And then let's see what else. And then Uncle John, or John Miller, Choice Books gives him books for the prison. They use a guy's version since he primarily goes to guys' prison. So there's a lot of daily wisdom for women, 2025 devotional collection. Any of you ladies want them, they're on a table in the back. Feel free to help yourself. I know it's July already, but these are nice for scrap paper, jotting, or whatever. Still about a half year journaling left there, so help yourself to those. And then maybe just one other comment. I know it's always kind of a bittersweet time for us here hosting the fellowships. It's been actually 16 years ago to the day when Dallas's sister had an accident here Anyway, Dallas is here. Stephanie, it would have been 16 years ago to the day. So it's always kind of bittersweet for us. But to me, I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to announce it or not, but a couple people mentioned it to me, and it's just, it's something that happened. We can't really ignore it. And then also, the thing that spoke to me was how fast time goes. A lot of y'all would have been maybe been 5 or 6. You don't really know, but for the local folks here, it helps us remember seriousness of life and just anyway. So again, thanks very much for coming tonight. Be here tomorrow morning at 9:30, and then we will finish out the weekend with a Sunday morning service. I think Morris Graber will be bringing the message then. So, is anything I missed?